And before this video begins, I'd just like to give a special thank you to my Asban Team level patron, Fallon Cortez. Thank you for supporting the channel. Smile! Ew, what are you doing? Ugh, that's gross, I'm ashamed of you. A companion's first trip in the TARDIS is always a landmark moment for any series of Doctor Who. Seeing the Doctor take the time and space machine for a spin to show their new companion the future, past, space, or all of the above. When it came to Series 10, showrunner Stephen Moffat wanted to stick with a familiar formula that had worked for his two previous companions Amy Pond and Clara Oswald, with Bill Potts taking a trip first to the future in episode 2 before then going into the past in episode 3. This would become Smile, by Frank Cottrell Boyce, writer of the acclaimed Series 8 episode In the Forest of the Night. Okay, maybe not acclaimed. Smile sees the Doctor take Bill to a picturesque future Earth colony, only to find it empty because the emoji robots have been killing everyone for not being happy enough. Something Twitter joke. Anyway, the pilot was a really gripping and engaging introduction to Bill to start the series, but does Smile manage to continue that momentum and continue building up Series 10? Or is it a great idea hamstrung by some bad decisions and terrible pacing? Well, as always, that's what I'm here to find out. So put your biggest smile on and get ready for a Vardy party, because it's time to take a deep dive into Smile.
It's a dirty job, but someone's got to do it.
One of the best parts about the pilot was all the banter and character interaction between the Doctor and Bill, so it's a good place for Smile to begin, continuing to build up that dynamic with a nice scene of the pair in the TARDIS as Bill finally gets to ask more questions about the impossible machine. It has a similar rapid back and forth to the opening of the pilot, which creates a great sense of cohesion and continuation between the two episodes. I mentioned it in my review of that episode, but Bill is very much an audience surrogate, entering this world with a fresh perspective, and that's again present in this episode with all these realistic questions about the TARDIS, only serving to make the time machine even more magical and awe-inspiring, because it continues to defy all the logic Bill is trying to bring into it.
Where's the steering wheel?
The whole episode is another great character showcase, with Bill and the Doctor continuing to establish a fun and unique dynamic punctuated by Bill's curiosity, skepticism and humour. All things that work so well to make her feel like such an authentic person dropped into this chaotic and strange world. Nardole even shows up to nag the Doctor just like he did in the previous episode, which helps to make it feel like both the Doctor and Bill are rebels escaping into adventure, which is very much the core appeal of the show in general. When the Doctor and Bill do manage to shoo away the prying Nardole, they decide to see if the future is happy. So they go to one of Earth's first colonies, where the settlers have apparently cracked the secret of human happiness. Spoiler, it's subscribing to the Harbo Wholmes channel. This colony looks absolutely gorgeous with its sleek white minimalist design, making everything seem so utopian because the bright clean spaces are the exact kind of stereotype we've come to associate with these idealistic future cities. Parts of the episode were filmed in Valencia's City of Arts and Sciences, which naturally embodies this utopian aesthetic, and it fits the episode so well, it just looks perfect. The sense of scale and the cavernous rooms and corridors also help to emphasise the mystery and isolation when the Doctor and Bill find the colony completely empty. Not a single human settler to be seen anywhere. This is just classic sci-fi storytelling, introducing you to the perfect utopia where humans can live in peace and harmony, only to pull that out from underneath you because there's clearly something wrong in a darker underside of this apparent paradise. And it's all thanks to the Vardys. Yes, whilst the Doctor and Bill explore this empty utopia with great sound design establishing an unsettling atmosphere because of the eerie silence, they encounter the Vardy interface, or as they're otherwise known, the emoji bots. Yes, we were always bound to get to something about Series 10 I'm not too keen on. I do like most of the design though.
It's cute.
these small, non-threatening bodies with a sleek, minimalist design reflecting that of the colony around them. It makes them feel like an integral part of the environment itself, which is intentional when we find out that they are an interface for the living city. I feel like the emoji bots are quite Apple-esque with their clean lines and approachable design. It's a very uniform look that comes across as very friendly and almost toy-like. You know those robots you'd see in the Argos catalogue or in adverts on kids TV like in Nickelodeon? The emoji bots just really remind me of those, and it's a nice consumerist look, making them feel very passive and friendly. Even their slow, shuffling movement gives them a certain innocence, which turns from endearing to chilling over the course of the episode as they become inescapable, like a creeping danger always monitoring the protagonists. They don't have to rush because they're everywhere, needing no urgency as they pursue the Doctor and Bill, the very environment itself becoming a villain.
Do you know what it means when something chases you very slowly? What? It means there's a reason that they don't have to run.
I do love the transition as they go from this innocent, cute presence to a silent, chilling danger, a cheery and contradictory threat killing anyone who isn't happy, a change communicated with a simple shift of their digital faces. And yes, let's talk about the most obvious part of the emoji bots, the emojis. The robots have these big screen faces, showing facial expressions resembling the emojis that have become so commonplace in today's digital society. Writer Frank Control Boyce thought that the audiences would be able to understand the colony world's sense of utopia by associating it with the versatility and freedom emojis bring to communications in the modern day. They're something we can easily relate to and understand because we use them all the time. And they do look fine, especially how they turn something so innocuous and friendly into a symbol of a threat later on, but it feels pretty gimmicky to me. Emojis are very dominant in society, a lot of people use them constantly. In fact, the whole emoji setup in this episode was inspired by Jenna Coleman's constant use of emojis in text to Stephen Moffat and Peter Capaldi, who didn't really understand them. But the constant references to emojis make it feel a little bit dated and desperate. You know, it's this crutch for the whole point of the episode. I won't deny that 7 years later emojis are still around and are as relevant as ever, but any kind of contemporary references like that can get very old very quick. Like having Missy dab later on, which has aged badly because, well, no one dabs anymore.
Yeah, okay, whatever.
It's natural for a contemporary character like Bill to make references realistic for a time period, but it's always a bit of a tightrope, because you don't want to rely on them as a quirky part of the story, and I think this story fails to strike the perfect balance in my opinion. You know, it'd be the same if in Series 14 Ruby Sunday kept going on about making TikToks, you know, it takes you out of it.
You're stupid.
However, as short-sighted as this emoji stuff is, I do think it helps to present a bit of a commentary on the reliance on technology in the modern day and how it shapes communication, with these emojis simplifying our expression of emotion. Language, both verbal and physical, is very nuanced, with a lot of small elements and minor differences that do get lost when we rely on symbols, which cannot always capture or convey the complexity of real human emotions and expression. There are a million ways to smile, but with only a couple of smile emojis, technology can't take all of those into account. And that's part of the message of this episode, which I'll talk about a bit later. But it also taps into societal pressures to always present a positive image, with the emoji bots killing anyone who isn't sufficiently happy. Social media often encourages people to display carefully curated versions of their lives. Almost every post is some sort of outward display of how you want to be seen. If you post a lot of photos from parties, you're showing how outgoing you are. If you post a lot of holiday photos, it projects an image of opulence and being well travelled. You choose what you post or don't post, because you know each one of those posts builds a perception somebody else has of you. We all do this, consciously or not, and when this happens across social media, it makes everyone's life seem so much happier or more exciting than it might actually be, because happiness and success is valued above all else. Smile's use of the emoji bots is like an allegory of this. Their obsession with happiness at all costs, representative of how we lie about our own lives to shun any negative emotions, because we want everyone to think we're having an amazing time. Toxic positivity is an extreme application of having an optimistic outlook, like the grimly comedic scene at the start of Smile where Good Thing implores Kezzy to smile even when she says all their friends and family are dead. This is obviously an exaggerated satire of how a lot of modern society undervalues or suppresses negative emotions because they're frowned upon. So these emotions are not given space to be processed and handled with sensitivity because everyone is expected to be happy all of the time, just like the characters within this narrative. Whilst the Doctor and Bill explore this beautiful but empty utopia, their working theory seems to be that the colonists simply haven't arrived yet. The city has just been built by the incredible Vardy nanobots.
Nanomachines, son.
I do like this slow build, a very traditional sci-fi focus on exploration, problem solving, and uncovering truths, balancing wonder and suspense in a very old school way. Even the setup itself is typical science fiction. An idyllic utopian setting with a dark reality underneath is one of the oldest tricks in the book, and that's exactly what we get here, as the Doctor works out that the skeleton crew has actually already arrived, but has been turned into calcium fertilizer for the plants. I guess now we know what bone meal is.
This is the setup team. The skeleton crew.
I do really like this twist, especially with how the Doctor and Bill react to it. Bill, on her first proper trip, is obviously a bit more emotional and shocked at discovering all this death. It's a horrifying moment for her, but for the Doctor, it's just a Saturday afternoon. It's a part of a larger puzzle he has to solve, a very detached, pragmatic, and almost clinical approach to death because of his millennia-old experience with mortality. They have such different worldviews and experiences, sprinkling in some complexity to their growing partnership, and it gets a great payoff in the next episode. Since the Doctor is so quickly to dismiss death and even cause it himself, so moments like these are excellent for building up that character. I love the scene as the Doctor tries to park Bill inside the TARDIS, only for her to follow him and point out how he flies around helping people. A playful scene further showing how their relationship is growing, as Bill, like the new audiences, learn all these deeper elements of the Doctor over the course of adventures. And it's a moment paid off really well towards the end of the episode. Around halfway through the story, the protagonists discover the original colony ship, which has become the centre of the city as the Vardys build around it. There's such a great contrast between the sleek white, clean surfaces of the city and the rusty iron bolts and screws of the spaceship.
Whoever did the interior decoration in here needs to take lessons from whoever did it out there.
I've mentioned it before in previous videos, but I really like the idea of colony ships, and I think Smile handles it well with the Erewhon, a nod to Samuel Butler's novel of the same name, exploring a satirical utopia with ideas of machines developing consciousness, a concept Smile also explores. The ship looks gorgeous, and I love how it's full of human relics, making everything feel so ancient and historic. It also perfectly paves the way for the emotional moment where Bill finds the complete history of humanity, which descends into war, famine, death, and desperation, with the Erewhon one of the evacuation ships taking humanity's last hopes into the stars in an attempt to survive. It's a scene really well acted by Pearl Mackie, Bill desperately needing to know what happens for things to get this bad. And there's real emotion there, like imagine being in her shoes and being faced with this horrible prospect. Doctor Who has touched upon this kind of desperate future before with the Ark in Space and the Beast Below, so I appreciate the continuity here. And of course, just when the Doctor is about to blow the whole thing up to fix everything, it turns out the colonists are all still on board and waking up, which obviously complicates things because now you have the last vestiges of the human race about to walk into a massacre if they ever feel a little bit upset. Indeed, everything clicks into place when the Doctor works out that this all started with the first death in the colony, a regular everyday incident that broke the programming of the Vardis because they don't know how to deal with grief. Much like many computers or implementations of artificial intelligence, the Vardis misunderstood the complexities of their programming. Their role is to make everyone happy, so they identified grief as the opposite of happiness, and anyone experiencing grief is a problem that needs to be dealt with. I think the most horrifying part of this is how the entire massacre all took place in one single afternoon, showing just how quickly this domino effect is, and also establishing just how dangerous the current situation now has become. Because all these colonists are now waking up, unknowingly about to walk into the exact same bloodbath but in far bigger numbers. It's all an exploration of the potential dangers of AI, a reflection of how basic human emotions can be easily misinterpreted by technology and leading to these unintended, disastrous consequences. Can technology be trusted to understand the true depth of human feelings if it's reliant on such limited, basic forms of communication and a really limited perception of emotion? This episode suggests that no, it can't. Because that's the difference between humanity and lines of code. Machines can't feel, so they can't understand the complexities of our own feelings and can't be trusted to judge or maintain our emotions. Because just as easily as the emoji bots can assume you're happy if you're fake smiling, they can also assume you're sad if you're like me and you have resting bitch face. Of course, a kid wanders off and the few humans who have already woken up decide that the only way to deal with the Vardy crisis is to shoot everything. Because, of course it is. This episode has a very negative view of humanity for extremely fair reasons, because we are a very destructive species. The human colonists in this episode refuse to listen to reason or the Doctor's pleading, which is very typical for both Doctor Who and sci-fi in general, because humanity is always its greatest enemy. It creates a great climactic standoff for the episode, the tone suddenly shifting from this playful, light-hearted adventure to a more philosophical exploration of human emotions and technological dependence. Like I mentioned, the emoji bots aren't really traditional villains, because they're simply following their programming. There's no malice there, it's all one big misunderstanding. But the human characters don't understand that as they strike against the Vardis, resorting to violence and conflict resolution through combat rather than basic communication and empathy. Because, as the Doctor realizes at the last minute, the Vardi have become more than just AI robots. They've become self-aware and are alive, which opens up an entire new can of worms for the themes and subtext of the story, adding a whole new layer to it all. Just when it seems like all hell is breaking loose, the Doctor is able to shut everything down so we can finally get people to sit down and listen to him for a change. And, like he promised, this takes the form of a lecture. Throughout the episode, he constantly makes references to a magic haddock, and its payoff is at the end here, in the form of a parable. I've spoken before about the famous story of the monkey's paw, where a couple encounter a monkey's paw able to grant wishes, which end up manifesting in very literal ways and proving the age-old adage, be careful what you wish for. The magic haddock story in this episode is almost the exact same, except this time with a conclusion that
Magic haddock. Like robots, don't think like people.
And, like the story, the Doctor presses the reset button, completely rebooting the Vardi and wiping their memories, so they're now a sentient, independent lifeform that owns this city. It's a bit of a rushed ending, unfortunately, but it does introduce some interesting ideas of environmentalism and colonialism. First of all, it recontextualizes the Vardi as a slave race of sorts, programmed to serve the humans without ever being seen as equals or independent entities because of their relationship with humanity. The way Steadfast and the other humans still expect to own the city and destroy the now native Vardi very much touches upon ideas of colonialism, with humanity expanding into space and immediately trying to control and overlook indigenous or non-human life. After all, look no further than our own existing history within Earth itself, which is full of examples of colonists killing, hunting, or enslaving the natives of their new homes. the British Empire, the Dutch colonial empire, the Spanish and Portuguese colonization of the Americas, the Japanese colonial empire, the French colonization of America and Africa. The list goes on almost endlessly, and almost no country in the entire world is clean. The desire for conquest and supremacy is ingrained within human nature, even within these desperate humans fleeing a broken world, who expect to use the Vardi as mindless tools rather than living independent beings with their own consciousness and rights. It's a very powerful critique, but it ends up as nothing more than subtext. The episode doesn't really elaborate on it, which is a big shortcoming, because the most powerful message in the entire thing is nothing more than a footnote that might not even be intentional. I do have more than a few issues with the narrative function of this ending, because it feels too quick and way too convenient. We get all this build up, the episode even kind of sags in the middle because of all the exploration, slowing things down to a halt for us to explore, only to then rush the ending as the Doctor just reboots everything, and all the important civilization establishment stuff happens off screen. Of course, it probably would have been just as boring as the similar negotiation scene in the Series 5 Silurian two-parter, but I just really don't like how quickly the whole resolution is skipped over in Smile. The whole rebooting thing feels like too much of an easy fix without addressing the deeper ramifications and ethical complexities of AI and its coexistence with humanity. Now that the Vardi are truly independent, how do they interact with humans? Can they now understand human emotion better, no longer being forced to cater to human happiness? It just leaves you with so many questions and feels pretty disappointing. The solution to the crisis doesn't really have anything to do with the issue itself, so it feels like you wasted your time watching all this build up only for it to go nowhere. It definitely doesn't nail the landing for me, especially with all these great, fascinating underlying themes and subtext ending up undeveloped or underexplored and more like wasted potential than anything else. I know a lot of people really like Smile, but unfortunately, I'm not one of them. I won't pretend there isn't a lot I do appreciate about it. The episode has an incredible look to it, with fantastic location filming and set design bringing this alien planet and futuristic utopian city to life in an excellent way. The tone is also very solid, balancing the light-hearted banter between the Doctor and Bill with darker, more reflective themes. Peter Capaldi also delivers a striking performance, perfectly embodying the Doctor's famous mix of curiosity, brilliance, and occasional arrogance. The character's weariness, yet eternal optimism, shines through and weaves into the very core of the narrative itself, and I think that works well. However, I'm not a fan of the Vardi as fake-out villains. They look great, sure, but the reliance on emojis is a bit of a lame gimmick. The resolution is really disappointing, and also the whole idea of them being a misunderstood monster feels very derivative of both the pilot and Control Boyce's previous episode in the Forest of the Night. It's a perfectly serviceable first outing for Bill, but unfortunately I could never really give it much higher than a C rank on the Series 10 tier list, because the middle act sags way too much and the ending is incredibly weak and rushed as a consequence. It's a significant step down from the pilot, which had brilliantly tight writing and structure, never wasting a moment and keeping a perfect pace, whilst Smile just seems like a pale imitation. It's a real shame since I like so many of the ideas it introduces and hints at, but it never really delivers on them in a truly satisfying or rewarding way. So I guess you could say it didn't make me smile. But what do you think? Was I too harsh? Let me know in the comments. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye. And I'd just like to give a special thank you to my Asbantium level patron Fallon Cortez, my Platinum level patron Matthew Burns, and my Gold level patrons Chris Douglas and Daniel Shillito. Thank you so much for your support.